There's nothing worse than taking a pay cut, but unfortunately, we're all pretty much headed in that direction. And we actually have been for quite some time due to the rising prices and exacerbation of the insanely high cost of living through inflation. But now we are seeing yet another blow to income and people getting desperate as far as what they're going to do and how they're going to mitigate this situation, how they're going to survive and get by, prepare for this income paycheck SHTF moment of literally trying to keep their heads above water and make it paycheck to paycheck, avoiding all the potential catastrophic and negative circumstances that would ensue if their money were to run dry. Now, we are seeing a 5% pay cut across the board in 90 days or less, specifically for a certain group of people, as well as expectations of a reduction in Social Security and people holding on for hope that there could potentially be a positive outlook. But that wouldn't occur until at least January of 2024. That's some time away from now. But meanwhile, we're seeing a turn down and an increase in turn downs and rejection rates on loans. And typically you're going to see loans and applications for loans put in at two different times. One time, well, the first time or one of the times will be behind door number one. And door number one is what we experienced at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 because money was cheap, interest rates were low, and banks were pretty much approving everybody, really. So there was a huge incentive for people to borrow and banks to lend. That was before we got to today, where everybody is seeing the error in their ways, so to speak. And that's door number two. And we are experiencing what's behind door number two today, which is applications for loans because people are they need money. They're in trouble. They are buried in debt. They cannot survive. They do not have enough, and prices continue to go up. The biggest problem with door number two is if you're borrowing money because you don't have money, that's a big problem because ultimately you have to repay that money. Well, that is unless you're part of a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund or in capital investment group and you just choose not to pay your bills. But we'll save that conversation and discussion for another video. Now, we've got economists and experts coming on different publications and mainstream media and stating that they are cautiously optimistic that we can manage a soft landing here. Now, I'm going to say that 99% of the people watching this video are probably not in the same financial category as these analysts and economists and experts and CEOs and investors and hedge funds managers and stockbrokers and traders. And odds are 99% of people watching are not in that category. And the term cautiously optimistic basically means things are not going to be good. We don't know how bad they're going to be or when they're going to get as bad as they could possibly be. But we also don't want to cause too much panic amongst the general population and public. So we're going to say cautiously optimistic. Yeah. Read between the lines here, folks. More inflation ultimately is what they're saying we will see later this fall. And that is what the Fed is worried about. Expectations of November rate hikes are possible, which would mean that we would see a rise in interest rates yet again. And for anybody who's trying to manage a credit card balance that they cannot seem to pay off, well, another interest rate hike would just make that even more difficult to do. Real earnings. Now, they say that real earnings are effectively positive. Technically, real earnings against real headwinds. And they give analogies of how airplanes land in headwinds. They do it all the time. Sailboats even sail into headwinds, depending on how you jigger the mast, is what they say. Great analogies, but at the end of the day, 99% of people watching this video don't know what headwinds are, but they feel them all the time. And the headwinds are essentially pay cuts, rise in interest rates, this cautiously optimistic soft landing, higher prices at the grocery stores, shortages experienced at home because they don't have the money necessary to buy the necessities that they need. So they also mentioned Social Security payouts and student loans. And basically what they said was everything you heard was true. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, a select group of people are going to experience pay cuts, and they're going to include Social Security recipients and those with student loans. And effectively, student loan or anyone or any person who has student loan debt is effectively going to experience at least a 5% pay cut because they're going to have to start repaying their loans back. So the grace period there of this CARES Act and student loan payment pause is coming to an end, and essentially they want their money. So anyone who wasn't paying student loans here recently, about on average 5%. So expect a 5% pay cut because more of your income is going to be going to making those payments. And we cannot leave out those who are on strike. Now, granted, those who are on strike will ultimately, eventually, hopefully get paid and potentially improve their situations overall. But outside of the currently most talked about in the news is the Screen Actors Guild, SAG. Outside of the roughly 160,000 that are protected by union contracts, there are so many more who are not, who are a little bit further down the line. This is the spillover, is what they describe it as, that will ultimately hit in August. Okay, so not too long from now, in August. And this is going to be before the Fed meets next in September. Expectations of cooling as the numbers and reports come in for July, but there's still some time before those numbers ever come out. Okay, so there's expectations of cooling, which is going to be, tagging along with this cautiously optimistic headline. But there's always a but. Expectations of heating up towards the end of the year and focus on increase in medical costs. So if a 5% hit wasn't enough on student loans, now you have to factor in a rise in medical costs with, get this, major cuts on Social Security are back on the table. And this was just 2 days ago that they put this up. And it says that a group of Republican lawmakers aims to balance the federal budget and slash government spending by targeting programs like Social Security. And some seniors could see a major reduction in lifetime benefits if the plan makes it into law. The proposal was unveiled earlier this month, and this was by the U.S. House conservatives. One of the main features is to raise the FRA, the full retirement age, at which some seniors are entitled to the full benefits they are due. That would try to reduce the immediate outflow of payouts, which wasn't a part of the original agreement, folks, here. But hey, look, they can change the rules as they go along. But either way, major cuts to Social Security are back on the table. While we're seeing Social Security could potentially fall short in a short period of time, 2035, the future of Social Security remains uncertain, forcing people to ask questions like, will Social Security run out? And according to a 2022 annual report from the Social Security Board of Trustees, Social Security's cash reserves will be fully depleted by 2034. And I'm not making this up. I'm literally reading this to you from GoBankingRates.com. 1 year earlier than the 2020 report indicated, and annual taxes are expected to cover only about 78% of the benefits each year after that. Okay. So, not great news for Social Security. There is a little glimmer of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe, as this 2024 cost of living adjustment COLA increase could potentially see a momentary rise in payments being received in the totals. However, if there are continuous cost of living adjustment increases that exceed the amount that the Social Security Administration takes in from working individuals in payroll, then you have to realize that the writing's on the wall. The money is going out faster than it is coming in. So again, people are having their backs pressed up against the wall. They're painted into a corner and they're trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I try and manage this situation and survive? And they're going to banks and potentially less than ideal lending opportunities, payday loans or whatever it may be. And things are actually far worse than anyone has ever really mentioned here recently. And that's because people are now getting desperate. Outside of the increase in turn downs and rejection rates for loans for credit cards and cars, auto loans, personal loans, not really sure about mortgage refinance, because now would be a terrible time to refinance for 99% of the people out there. But Forbes reports that people are now using fake pay stubs and overstating their income. And this is after the banks have started pulling out of auto financing, which is really scaring the industry. Now, it's not only scaring those who need the loans for the vehicles that now cost exponentially more than they ever have before. Quite possibly some of the vehicles that they don't really need, and they could probably buy something less expensive. Notice I didn't say affordable. I just said less expensive. But the other problem is going to affect those who are selling these vehicles, the dealerships, the employees, the salespeople, the finance managers, everyone involved. This is the trickle-down effect. I guess this is how we make or build America back better, I guess. I'm not really sure. Apparently something was wrong with it before, so we got to build it back better by tearing everything down. Now, it says that auto shoppers looking to finance their next vehicle have fewer choices of lenders since a slew of banks pulled out of what's known as the indirect market, making car loans through dealerships, other third parties. That plus sky-high sticker prices has created a bit of desperation for some consumers who can't swing a vehicle purchase without financing the cost. So they're getting desperate, and the underwriters are seeing it. The banks are seeing it. The banks, because you got to think, if there's a pool of banks and everybody is operating literally on pretty much the same playbook, don't worry about it. However, let's just say 25 to 30 to maybe 40% of those banks, they pull out. They're all sitting around a poker table and they fold. Well, then the remaining 60 to 70% of banks are going to be like, they're going to start paying closer attention to what's happening in the game. Therefore, why did they pull out? Why did they throw in the towel? Obviously, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. The risk is far too great. Therefore, they begin to start taking closer notice so that they don't wind up in a terrible situation that they potentially saw the warnings and alerts and signs as the other banks left, and they kept playing and, doubling their bet or raising. But again, people need money. Credit card application rejections are on the rise, and according to a new note released by the Federal Reserve on July 17th, it has reached almost 22% in June, and that is a significant increase since February, which was 17%. Credit card limit increases. Credit card limit increases is the most likely application to get rejected. And according to the Fed survey, that light shut off because it's uncensored, almost 31% of all those applying for an increase got told no. So heads up, folks, mortgage applications were declined by 13%, while mortgage refinancing rejections were up to almost 21%. Again, I don't know why you would want to refinance right now unless you really, really need the money and you have equity and you want to pull it out. But now is the worst time to do it because, you know, the home values may have ticked down a little bit, but the interest rates have shot up extremely high. So I wouldn't even be looking at a refi. I'd be looking at a home equity loan or home equity line of credit, if anything. That way I'm only paying the higher interest on that particular balance, which I could potentially only have to pay when I use, versus converting my entire note to a higher interest rate to pull out the cash. That if you're then banking on maybe down the road you can refinance again at a lower rate, you're spending a whole lot of money. You're spinning your wheels. You're losing dollars chasing pennies, basically. And it's just a terrible situation to be in. But this is the situation that we are in now and ultimately have been forced into because of some of the actions and decisions that have been made by those in control, in power, those in Washington, on Capitol Hill. Some of these extremely wealthy elites and businesses and corporations, and this extends beyond the borders of this country. This is a global epidemic, really, a financial epidemic, which is why I stress so much about doing all you can to secure yourself and your family financially. Now, we got a lot more to discuss, but I don't want this video to be 30 minutes. So I'm just going to end it here. If you guys made it this far, please smash that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you guys real soon. Take care. Bye.